Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here. Today we're talking about Terminator 2D No Fate because this is a new arcade shooter that takes place in the Terminator universe, and I gotta admit that at this point I have played every single aspect of it. Every mode, I've beaten every level and gotten an S rank on every stage. I've unlocked the optional endings, but something about this just feels very overpriced. This is a $30 game, but even after having done everything, seen everything, tried every difficulty, it took me about 4.5 hours. Every run through of this game is about 35 minutes long because this isn't a big RPG or something like that. It's a shooter. It's an arcade shooter. It's a run and gun style game like Contra or Metal Slug or something like Rocket Knight Adventures. And as good as this is, as charming as this is, it still feels like there's not quite enough meat on the bone. But let's talk. Hi, hope you're having a great day. And if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. You know, something I missed the most about the 90s and early 2000s was like movie tie-in games. You know, whenever you'd get something like The Incredible Hulk or Godzilla or Terminator, of course, you'd actually get a game that went along with it. And some of them sucked, some of them were good, but there was something so charming about that. I like the fact that recently we've started to get that again. There was like a Mummy demake that came out, or the recent games for RoboCop are fantastic. And clearly they basically went, okay, let's try and do some Terminator games. They did a Terminator first-person shooter called Resistance that was fantastic. This is essentially a complete beat-for-beat demake of the Terminator 2 movie. Same exact plot line, same scenes and stuff, but just basically made for the Super Nintendo. And I like the charm of it, but I just have to say that it still feels like it's lacking that extra oomph to make you care about it. Now, let's start by talking about the gameplay itself. 99% of the levels play identically. It's a run and gun shooter. You can shoot, you can manually aim by holding the trigger, you can actually aim up and at directions and stuff. But a lot of these levels are incredibly sparse. It's pretty much just running and blasting everybody. There are different difficulty levels. Some of them that make it where the enemies have a lot more health, or sometimes even just extra enemies appearing on every stage. But really, a lot of the charm of this game isn't necessarily just beating it on the hardest difficulty. For me, it's just seeing that cool pixel art, the way they make like hunter-killer drones and the crazy futuristic tech. But while you're playing through this, it is Terminator 2, but it has some extra pizzazz that makes it extra funny. Like you actually get to play in the far future, the distant future of 2029 as the adult John Connor in the Resistance. You actually get to put the Terminator in the time machine that makes him show up at the start of Terminator 2. All this stuff that I feel like it's that extra preamble that we always knew kind of existed, but it's cool to actually play it. It's cool to play adult John Connor in destroyed Los Angeles and be blasting people with your laser guns. What I did like is the fact that this isn't just purely a run and gun. There's actually these extra levels that kind of break up the pace. There's a sneaking level when you're actually trying to escape the mental hospital as Sarah Connor. That's actually pretty cool. You actually have to avoid the T-1000 and knock out guards and pick locks and stuff. And yeah, it's not super advanced, but it's fun. There's a scene with the T-800 when he first comes back, actually has to go into the biker bar and beat people up to get his leathers and stuff. Obviously, a scene straight from the movie, but here it's funny to have it as like a brawler, a beat 'em up, just throwing people around and conking them in the head with pool sticks and stuff. And if you punch the jukebox, it actually plays bad to the bone, just like that scene has in the movie itself. Funny little stuff like that. There's also a couple racing levels where you actually have to try and like basically drive a car and dodge different traffic and stuff on the highway while fighting against the T-1000. I like these stages. The pacing of the campaign itself, fantastic. There are some arcade games that I feel like are too obsessed with being one note. You know, here's a shooter, here's a boss. Here's a shooter, here's a boss. Minions, boss. Minions, boss. And I feel like this one does a good job of kind of mixing up the gameplay where everything feels good. But the extra level to this is that, well, it has alternate endings. Essentially, after you beat the game the first time, after you complete story mode the first time, there's a couple different modes in this. There's story mode, which actually basically follows the movie. But then there's arcade mode, which has no cutscenes, no continues, and honestly is way the heck harder. And then boss rush, which basically lets you fight. There's like, I think 13 bosses in the game. They're all pretty different and pretty difficult. You just fight those in a line. But in story mode, after you've beaten it the first time, you have 3 optional paths. Now, I like this, but I also don't like this. But let me start with why I do like this. So the optional paths are very, very different, actually. There are times where if you choose to kill certain people, if you choose to hack the T-800 and make it so he's not reprogrammed to learn and stuff, you can change the outcome of the movie itself. So because of it, it basically leads to a bad, dark future, but you get to play new scenes. Times where you actually have Sarah Connor getting arrested for murder and having to fight her way out of a police station. Or futuristic scenes where you actually get to play as Sarah Connor, way aged up actually in the future, fighting with the freaking resistance, but in that futuristic destroyed Los Angeles. There's also extra levels in these alternate paths. There's extra levels where you get to play as the T-800 with a minigun and blasting everything in Cyberdyne headquarters. These branching paths are very fun, but here's my problem with it. You only get a chance to start this starting in like chapter 6. There's like roughly 14 levels just for the normal story mode. You start getting the branching paths in level 6 and level 7. And my problem is that as much as I like these extra branching paths, it's annoying to, all right, now I want to see that extra path. Okay, start back at the beginning and replay all of it. I really liked some of those branching paths, but I do wish that after I beat the game and seen the other endings, give me straight up level select. They have a thing called level practice where you play one level, but I wish I could just start from level 3, 4, 5, 10. I wish that I could actually just start there instead of replaying it from the start every single time. I mean, it is an arcade game, so I guess that makes sense, but to me, it felt a bit odd. The weirdest part about this game, though, is definitely just what's missing. This has a lot of scenes straight from the movie. And that's great, right? It's cool to have that scene where you're like out there as Arnold minigunning all the different cop cars and stuff. That's great. The scene where you're driving down the highway and the T-1000 is crashing into your truck with a helicopter. Stuff like that is so freaking cool. But there's certain scenes from the movie that just aren't there at all. Like, I wish they had that scene when the T-1000 and the T-800 first see each other in the mall and you see Arnold Schwarzenegger whip out the shotgun and the roses fall down and he shoots him. There's a lot of stuff that's just not in this game at all. I guess if it's not purely action, they just don't show it. The weirdest thing, though, and it's my biggest gripe personally, I'm not even going to take anything off the score for this, but it is my biggest gripe personally, is that everybody in the game actually looks how they do in the movie, right? You know, Sarah Connor, it's Linda Hamilton. The guy playing John Connor looks like John Connor. Even the future one is based directly on the actor in the future. The T-800 does not look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I guess this makes sense. Arnold is such a big figure now. He doesn't like being constantly just called the Terminator forever. And it's also the fact that I'm sure he just didn't want to give his likeness to this game. But I have to admit that that did irk me because it does look weird. In every cutscene where the Terminator talks, you either see him from the back or he has a cut up face for absolutely no reason. It's just very, very odd. You know, maybe it's just that I'm an Arnold Schwarzenegger superfan. I have the literal Arnold Schwarzenegger encyclopedia of bodybuilding. It feels weird that he wouldn't put his name on this. This has all the licensed music, all the original soundtrack, even the sound effects from the movie. Everything's in there except for Arnold. It just looks a bit odd. I'm just going to say, to me, a bit of a disappointment to play a Terminator game that doesn't have Arnold in it. I will say this game is incredibly fun. I feel like even with my gripes and stuff, there's something kind of strategic and addictive to running through this game again and again and again. Like a lot of arcade games, it gets increasingly difficult. Some of those later levels, especially in the alternate endings, get increasingly incredibly hard. So I found myself almost stockpiling continues. If you explore the levels, a lot of times there's extra tiny paths, you know, a wall you can blow out or a hidden little side path, a ladder you can climb up. And if you do that, you find extra continues. And these give you extra, basically, coins for the arcade machine, right? The higher the difficulty, the less coins you have. And if you played on super easy baby mode, which at one point I did decide to test it, one of the run-throughs I did was super easy baby mode, you pretty much one-shot everything except the bosses, and you do have infinite continues. I do like playing it on normal or hard, though. It is cool that, honestly, getting to fight those extra mobs. And also, it is cool that you sort of have this strategy of trying to stockpile continues, that way you can make it to the end. I feel like this is a good game that in a lot of ways is charming, is made for the fans. But the fact that it's only 35 minutes long, after you run through it a couple times, this has got to be the most expensive game for like hours to dollar ratio. Is it good for a Terminator fan? Yes. Is it worth it? Probably not. This is what I would say is a $10 masterpiece, a $15 good deal, and a $20 eh. All right, so we've heard some good, some bad. Let's go to the rating sport and put a big number on it. I am giving Terminator 2 No Fate an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. And of course, be sure to read the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, because this book, it's actually great. Obviously, the reason it's pretty much never left print. It literally says, hey, here's how to build every single muscle you've ever wanted to build with full pictures, including with Arnold. Imagine an ad read for the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding at the end of a freaking review. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.